when your vitamin D level gets less than 18, your risk of death goes up 30%. That was one of my first papers that we did and stuff. And because in our ICU trauma patients, African American women had the highest mortality rates, and they had the lowest vitamin D level. And African American males had the second highest mortality rate, and Caucasians had the lowest mortality rate. And so they're always talking about healthcare disparities in the United States, but in my research, we found out that most healthcare disparities due to vitamin D deficiency.
Welcome to The Nugget, where inspiring changemakers and dynamic individuals share their nuggets of wisdom to inspire our dreams. I'm your host, Bianca Vivian, and today I'm here with my lovely co-host.
Hi, I'm Keasia Hudgens.
Today we're joined by world-renowned trauma surgeon, Dr. Leslie Ray Matthews. Dr. Matthews, you have broken barriers in medicine. You've made huge strides in research on the importance of vitamin D, and you even successfully treated the brainstem injury of football player Jordan Sloan. You're a graduate of University of Mississippi and the illustrious Morehouse School of Medicine. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
So we're just going to start off with a little bit about yourself, how you grew up. I know growing up, being that you're from Mississippi, it's extremely uncommon, to have Black doctors from your time because, even it's more common now, but it was extremely uncommon then. So a little bit about how you got started, what inspired you to get into medicine would be great.
Okay, well, I'm originally from Indianola, Mississippi, which is the hometown of B.B. King. I'm the youngest of 12 children. My mom had the first set of Siamese twins that were successfully separated back in 1955. NBC News just did a big news article story on them 2 weeks ago. My dad sang with B.B. King. He was a Baptist minister and an elementary school principal. They had a group called the St. John Gospel Singers from 1942 to 1946. So B.B. King originally wanted to be a gospel singer, but he ended up becoming a blues singer. My mom said he was a better gospel singer than he was a blues singer. So he wanted the group to go on the road with him, but the other guys became ministers and the group disbanded, and B.B. King went on to become B.B. King. So basically from the age of 4 years old, I knew I wanted to be a physician. And so I told my doctor at 4 years old I was going to be a surgeon. And then when I graduated and finished my surgical training, he reminded me, I told him at 4 years old I was going to be a surgeon.
Wow.
I mean, that's a huge leap, though. So you kind of just carried that with you. I mean, so did you see Black doctors around you, or was it just something like, that's what I want to do?
That's what I knew I wanted to be. There were not many Black doctors around. So growing up in the Mississippi Delta, most of the schools were segregated. Still, even though they had started integration, they had the academies, which were the private schools where most of the white kids went, and then they had the public schools where most of the Blacks. But the thing is, I had exceptional teachers that had trained at the Ivy League schools and other top schools, and they held us to the highest standards.
These were Black teachers?
Yes, they were.
Are you enjoying the conversation? Please like and subscribe to our channel. Be sure to hit the bell for notifications and be the first to know when new episodes drop. Please comment below.
Back in the 50s and 60s and I think the early 70s, you could not go to some of the predominantly white institutions. So what the government of those southern states would do, they would pay for those talented Black students to go to the Stanfords, the Harvards, the Yales, and keep them out of their private institutions. So they actually did them a favor, really. Right. So my generation of teachers were highly educated. They were Stanford, Harvard, Yale, educated.
Wow. And so very early on, you already were surrounded and impacted by, I guess, a high level of education, right? Which I'm sure helped you develop your desires to continue to further your education, especially at a time when it wasn't as prevalent and during that time. And we know you went to Morehouse, correct? Mm-hmm. How was that experience for you? And what was that like being at a HBCU, or predominantly Black school? How was that experience for you?
Well, I just basically focus on what I'm there for and stuff. And so I look at everything as a positive experience and what I can learn. And so I don't dwell on anything else that's not dealing with the task at hand. So I was there doing my surgical training, my surgical residency for 5 years. And so that was my task, was to complete my surgical residency training so I can become a surgeon.
Well,
And so like you said, growing up in Mississippi, my dad was an elementary school principal. So most of my friends' parents were teachers, school counselors. And so I grew up in a community about 3 or 4 streets where it was nothing but teachers and counselors. And so I grew up around education. So everybody's house that you went over to visit your friends, all the parents back in that time asked you, what are you going to do, or what do you want to be when you grow up?
yeah, I think honestly, this makes a huge difference and it resonates a lot with me because I spent my most formative years in Atlanta. And in Atlanta, even though, they have like the ghetto and like inner city and lower, working class neighborhoods, they also have like the middle class is Black, the upper middle class is Black. And so you get your doctors, lawyers, teachers, dentists, like they're all Black. And I think that was very contrasted to when I moved to California for high school. I feel like there was just a lot of working class Black people. And so they didn't really see that there was all of these options. So
Yes.
I find that people do that, tell me what you think about that. But I think growing up in the South, when you do have Black doctors and educators, race doesn't feel, so constrictive or like something that's weighing on you.
I think what you said is very true. Like I said, my environment, people thought since I was from Mississippi, we were ranked last and everything. They thought I was uneducated. We had dirt roads, didn't have indoor toilets, and all that fact. When matter of fact, my teachers were teaching us Shakespeare in the 8th and 9th grade, and so we were studying things that they were getting us prepared for college and for life.
Do you think that you ever walk into a room and people, they make that snap judgment that they're just like, oh, this is a
Oh,
Southerner?
all the time. I used to use it to my advantage. They used to call me the doctor from Mississippi, or spell Mississippi MI crooked letter, crooked letter. I mean, these are highly educated healthcare workers. Your state is ranked last. How did you make it out of Mississippi? What was your medical school experience like? Did y'all have books and cadavers? So I've heard all the Mississippi jokes.
It's always good when you can always bring that wow factor to whatever you're doing. I feel like people who underestimate you, it does give you an advantage in life, because then you get to show up and show out every time.
Yes. So I was like thrilled to be underestimated. I said, but you can't outwork me. And so I think my parents instilled in me a very good work ethic, so while they were making jokes, I was somewhere reading a book.
And it also gives you that room to develop on your own time without these heavy expectations, right? Of becoming like maybe an overachiever or anything. It's just like, no, life, you are able to like do it on your own time, but also you knew who you were and what you were doing despite what people may have thought of you.
Yes. Totally correct. Yeah. Totally correct. So
Yeah.
I always knew who I was. Like I said, from the age of 4, I knew I was going to become a surgeon.
Did you ever have that teacher that was deep? Like, I know a lot, or I guess you said like you grew up around a lot of teachers and encouragement, but was there ever a time even in college or like one of those moments where it's just like, you're not going to make it or you can't do that? Do you have any memories like that?
Yeah, you always have people that are distractors going to tell you you're not going to make it, or your critics. I heard that from the time I said I was going to become a surgeon. People even told my mom, why'd you put a notion in that boy's head he can become a surgeon? We don't know any Black surgeons. They would actually, criticize my mom, for what I said about, my dream and my future, saying that she was just filling my head up with a lot of nonsense. They've never heard of a Black surgeon.
Would you say your mom was a key factor in you maintaining your confidence in your youth?
It was both my parents. They were equally yoked, and so both of them expected excellence. And their favorite saying was, "Failure is not an option." They were not people. They didn't want to hear excuses. Period. So if you got a low grade, you need to go study more. You didn't study hard enough. You couldn't say the teacher doesn't like you, or she's not fair. They didn't want to hear that. So anytime you fell short of something, their thing was you need to work hard and put more effort into it. And so they were no nonsense parents. They didn't take, failure kindly. And they expect you to do your best, every time that you put forth effort.
So I heard you use the phrase equally yoked, which I know is a biblical term. So do you think like growing up in that sort of Baptist environment, did it weigh heavily, in your sort of development, both personally and professionally?
Yes, because you couldn't play my parents against each other. Most kids learn at a very early age, as early as 2, 3, 4 years old, how to manipulate one parent against the other. One parent will say no, and then they'll go ask the other parent say yes. And so they've learned at a very young age. But my parents were like, you go ask my mom something, she said no. Then you go ask my dad, what did your mom say? Stuff. And so you couldn't come between the two of them. They were always on the same page when it came to child rearing.
So I'm thinking also about the religious factor. Did that play into it as well? Like, did you keep that as you became older? Like, did it help you while you were going through medical school?
Yes. Well, you grew up in the house of a Baptist minister, of course. And then my uncle was a Baptist minister, and my cousin was a Baptist minister.
Wow.
And so my family was loaded with Baptist ministers. So yeah, you grew up in the church and you learned principles. We had to go to church every Sunday. So you grew up in the church and you learned, biblical principles.
Do you have an audio podcast? Are you looking to grow your audience? Partner with Prosper Digital TV, a virtual and full-service video production company. Visit www.prosperdigital.tv or call 718-622-0062 to get started today.
When you were growing, I mean, it seems like you were a really focused, determined, and just very structured. I don't know if structured is the right word, but maybe just it's like I said, focused and determined child, and maybe a teenager. Did you ever have any time in your youth where you kind of maybe
ran wild,
pivot, and had a moment where you were on the right track, or maybe you lost your way a little bit, and if you did, what brought you back to that point?
Well, I never really lost my way, but I had my fun growing up. So I did mischievous things just like other kids, but I tried to make sure I didn't get caught. So most of the time I didn't get caught because being the youngest of 12, you see your older siblings get spanked, you go note to self, don't do that or don't get caught doing that.
Yeah.
And so I had a great childhood.
Were you in the middle of the 12 or?
I was the youngest.
Okay, you said the youngest. I'm sorry. So you are the youngest. How does that feel? Because I also come from a larger family, and I felt like to some extent, I just feel like I'm a unicorn. I call myself a unicorn. I'm off in my own world with my siblings. And I feel like when you grow up in these in families, there's so many children that you kind of have to find your independence.
Right.
And go off and to find your own identity really early on, because there's so, the two parents raising 12 children, that's, you have to kind of create this world around yourself to show, create the space you want to find to get to where you're trying to get to. So how was that experience for you with 11 siblings? I'm sorry.
Well, my mom and dad encouraged independence, from the time you were 5 years old, you had to make up your own bed, so my mom did not come in the room, clean your room, make your bed, she washed and cooked and did other things. So she encouraged that you had chores from the time you were 5, 6 years old. And if you didn't complete your chores, you didn't get your allowance for that week. So they didn't tell you twice, they just told you one time, do something. You didn't complete it, you just didn't get your allowance. So you couldn't go to the ball game on Friday nights.
Yeah.
And so I was always independent and stuff. And so I always knew what I wanted to do. And so I established my identity and my autonomy at a very early age. Actually, of all my siblings, I'm probably the most independent. I'm probably the biggest thinker. Between all my other 11 siblings, there is a year or 2 years in difference in their birth. Between myself and the youngest girl, there's a 4-year gap. So I call myself a gap baby. So when I came along, when I was 8th grade, my next youngest person, she had graduated from high school. She was off to college. So I was at home by myself from the 8th through the 12th grade. So it's like I was an only child, basically.
Wow. I actually do wonder about that, because I feel like with 11 siblings, like I typically look at big families and you'll find that like maybe 3 of the kids are successful and then others went a different way. Like what is what is that balance or that family dynamic now?
Well, my family, like I said, my dad was an elementary school principal and a minister, so he had to come in both ways. So you couldn't get in trouble with any of the teachers because he knew all the teachers in the state. They had state teachers meeting,
Yeah.
teachers
Wow.
meeting. And he was a big minister in the Baptist church, so all the teachers were mostly Baptist, so they had state conventions every year. So everybody in the county basically knew my parents, and so you couldn't get in any trouble or go anywhere and do. You can't go to the next county and get into any trouble.
So all your siblings are like successful like career people?
Yes, my mom and dad told us all your only job is getting out your lesson. You don't have to work. So almost all my siblings graduated from high school with honors. My
Wow.
oldest sister, who's deceased now, she was a IRS supervisor. My oldest brother worked at Uncle Ben's in a computer department. My next sister is a retired elementary school principal. My next brother is retired sergeant major, 30 years in the military. My next brother is a retired major in the U.S. Air Force, AWACS commander.
Wow.
Then I have two Siamese twin sisters. They're both retired school teachers. And I had my sister Ann, who's an accountant with Shell Oil Company. Then there was Frida, my sister. She basically had an MBA and stuff. So everybody in my family was
That
educated.
is amazing.
Yeah.
That's actually incredible. Like I have a friend that she has 12 brothers and sisters. I'm actually supposed to see her later today. And she was telling me like she's the oldest. And
Mhm.
it's just like it's very difficult, especially with the huge age gaps, like trying to see which way people go. So
Yes.
you want to grow up in a two-parent household and be raised in a way that you all can like say like we had good lives and like made something of ourselves. That's a real testament to your parents.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Remember I said they were on the same accord. So it was nothing any of the children could do to come between them. They were always on the same page.
Wow.
Did you understand the privilege of growing up in a two-family home during that time? In your younger years, did you understand what it was like? Because I didn't grow up in a two-family home, and I understand the disadvantages I had in the world.
Mhm.
Did you understand at that age the advantage you had with growing up with two parents, educated parents, parents who were pushing you, or did you discover that later in life?
I discovered it very early in life because, like I said, Mississippi is the poorest state in the nation. 30% of the people live under the poverty level. So I knew a lot of poor people in my hometown that had large families and they only had a single parent, usually a mother at home. And I noticed how they struggled, had a harder time. A lot of the kids, a lot of the girls got pregnant in those larger families with only one parent in the house. Some of the kids got in trouble with the law, the legal system. And so it is very tough for a single parent to raise 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 kids by herself. So, yes, I understood how blessed I was to have both parents in the household.
Well, I actually read in your bio that, charity is extremely important to you and giving back. So what does that look like? Because I'm sure that those two are linked, like knowing you were fortunate in reaching these, historical positions, which we'll get into next. But what does it look like for you to sort of pour back into your neighborhood or communities that are similar?
Well, I learned that from my mom and dad. If somebody's house burned down or somebody lost something, they were the first ones to give clothes, bring food by somebody's house if somebody died.
I love your parents.
I'm like, how could you do that when you got 12 kids of your own? So we live right across the street from the high school. So it was, less than a rock's throw away. So back in those days, if you played high school sports, the schools didn't feed you after you got out of class. So you're just hungry, playing football, basketball, baseball. My mom would invite all the kids over and feed them. I'm like, it's like the pot that she had multiplied. Like, how you feed 12 kids and then you can feed half the high school at the same time. So it's like my parents were blessed beyond their belief. We never went without, lights never got turned off. We never lacked anything. We weren't rich, but we never lacked anything.
Right.
So it seems like the more they helped people out that was less fortunate than us, the more they got blessed.
Are you enjoying the conversation? Please like and subscribe to our channel. Be sure to hit the bell for notifications and be the first to know when new episodes drop. Please comment below.
I feel like that instills a level of confidence in you to just know, like, that kind of sufficiency, because when you are just like, when it's inconsistent, when attention is inconsistent and things like that, it can be very harping on someone's self-confidence. So I feel like you seem even now like very sure of yourself, very direct, you know, and I think that
Definitely
is
direct.
yeah, which I mean, for me, I feel like it's a very admirable quality. You don't see it a lot with people. Like now, you know, people second guessed or they have like a sense of double-mindedness, but I feel
Yes.
like what you're saying of just feeling like there's that sort of resoluteness of I'm okay in the world no matter what, I'm landing on my own 2 feet. Would you say that?
Yeah, well, I inherited that from both of my parents. Both of my parents were like that. They were both feisty. They were both determined. They refused to accept defeat. They refused to accept the status quo. They helped folks, and they would stop and talk to anybody. A trip to the grocery store, my parents could turn into a 2, 3, 4 hour event because everybody in the store wanted to stop and talk to them. So they didn't disrespect you whether you were homeless or drunk or wino or crackhead. So they treated all people the same with respect, regardless of their status in life. So I learned that from 2 parents, and then I saw how successful they were in their lives, exhibiting those principles.
What were their names?
My mom's name was Missouri. She was named after the state of Missouri. My dad's name was John, and then both of them were named after their grandparents. So both of my dad's granddad was named John Matthews, and then my mom's grandmom was Missouri Gray. So they were both named after their grandparents.
Missouri and John. Okay, I just wanted to evoke them before we move on. So, yeah, did you want to kind of transition as Keisha?
You knew from 4 years old that you wanted to be a doctor or a surgeon,
Right.
to be specific. As you continue to develop an education, besides being just a surgeon, how did you get to your specializing in vitamin D and understanding who did you want to cater to and what part of the medical field that you wanted to practice in?
Well, I knew I always wanted to do research, and so I said I want to do something to make a difference in the world that save lives, and something that's not too expensive, where something that the average person could afford, and something that will make a huge difference worldwide.
Mm-hmm.
So until I realized that vitamin D could do that, that's when I started doing research about 20 years ago.
Tell us about vitamin D, like you would explain it to a fifth grader, though.
Okay. Well, first of all, 97% of African Americans are vitamin D deficient. 97%. Okay. Half the world's population is vitamin D deficient. So there are 8 billion people on the planet. So 4 billion people are vitamin D deficient. So it's the most common nutritional deficiency in the world.
Mm-hmm.
So actually, vitamin D in itself is a pandemic. So vitamin D is not a vitamin, it's a hormone. And so hormones basically work in your blood system and affects a lot of different organs. So one thing that vitamin D does is you have 30,000 genes in the human body that determine your height, your sex, your intelligence, your eye color. And so vitamin D basically controls 3,000 out of those 30,000 genes, or 10% of your DNA. So vitamin D goes directly into your cell and attaches to the DNA, and it does a lot of different things. So anything that controls 10% of your DNA has to be powerful. That's a lot of DNA to control 10%. So it makes that single-handedly the most powerful chemical in the human body. So one of the things that vitamin D does is it stimulates your immune system and make your immune system stronger. Increases your white blood cell count. White blood cells is what fight off parasite, fungus, bacteria, cancer cells. So if I get the coronavirus, I have 1,000 white blood cells. My body's going to get overwhelmed when we get the coronavirus early in the pandemic, most likely get sick and succumb to it. So what vitamin D does is, instead of having 1,000 white blood cells, it upregulates your immune system. Now I got 100,000 white blood cells to fight the coronavirus from 1,000. So 100,000 is going to overwhelm the coronavirus and kill it out of my body, where I'm not going to get as sick or maybe not even get the disease. Another thing that it does, or another thing that diseases does, is it creates chronic inflammation in your body. So what vitamin or hormone D does, it decreases the amount of chronic inflammation. Chronic inflammation is like the phlegm that you get in your chest when you get a cold and you're trying to cough up that goo that you cough up. So that's the stuff that's floating around in your bloodstream system when you got the coronavirus real bad. It's called chronic inflammation. You have acute inflammation, what happens after you operate on somebody. So acute inflammation is good chronic inflammation is bad because it leads to heart attacks, strokes, diabetes, arthritis, and every heart attacks and every other chronic disease known to man. So if I can take an agent that's going to decrease my chance, and it also decreases your risk of death by 30% if you go in the hospital. So if
Wow.
regardless of the cause, so if I go in the hospital for a heart attack, stroke, traumatic brain injury, gunshot, pneumonia, whatever I got. So as a physician, why would I not use something that's going to lower my patient's risk of death by 30%?
So I
Yeah.
can just go and buy, but if I was taking vitamin D daily, like just a supplement of it, I would be getting all of these benefits, or?
Yeah, you get all these benefits. I mean, we've done research on it. And so we researched if your vitamin D level, which is like the amount of vitamin D in your bloodstream, when your vitamin D level gets less than 18, your risk of death goes up 30%. That was one of my first papers that we did and stuff. And because in our ICU, trauma patients, African American women had the highest mortality rates. They had the lowest vitamin D level. And African American males had the second highest mortality rate, and Caucasians had the lowest mortality rate. And so they're always talking about healthcare disparities in the United States, but in my research, we found out that most healthcare disparities due to vitamin D deficiencies. So as we got everybody's vitamin D level up rapidly, so I pioneered high dose vitamin D in ICU patients. Those I was using, people saying I was crazy, there was too much, they're going to get toxic. So never had a patient get toxic. But what we did after we got everybody's vitamin D level up rapidly, the mortality rate for African American women, African American men, Caucasian women, all equalized. So it was no difference in the mortality rates.
Wow.
So that's a fallacy that they've been telling the world, is that healthcare disparities is the most reason why you have healthcare disparities is socioeconomics. Well, Johnny Cochran was wealthy. He died from a brain tumor at a young age. He had money, he could have gone, but his, most likely had a low vitamin D level. So once you normalize people's vitamin D levels, it does cancer surveillance in your body too. So Mayo Clinic put out a paper stating that all women with breast cancer should be on vitamin D lifelong. So you hadn't heard that in the news. So why is this not being put in the news? They're just throwing, there's nothing wrong with chemotherapy, radiation, but you need to be on vitamin D also. And it's good for prostate cancer, breast cancer, triple negative breast cancer that disproportionately affect African American women. African American women have a 4 times higher fetal maternal mortality rate because almost 100% of Black women are vitamin D deficient. And so when you're pregnant, your baby is siphoning off the vitamin D. So your mom is trying to provide vitamin D for 2 people, the baby and herself. And that's the reason a lot of women have postpartum depression, because they're vitamin D depleted, after they deliver their baby. They don't have any vitamin D left in their body.
This is blowing my mind.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I feel like I'm learning so much right now. Do you feel, not to be all into conspiracies, but do you feel like that's intentionally done, that people don't realize how much the impact of vitamin D?
I try to stay away from conspiracy theories.
Yeah.
My thing is I try to educate, so I just assume people don't know.
Yeah.
And it's better in this case to apply the ignorance factor. Ignorance means you just don't know. It doesn't mean you can't learn that stuff. And so I think most people just don't know of the importance of vitamin D. And I'll tell you something else. There's a group called the Vitamin D Council out in California. They actually tried to sue the federal government back in 2011 because they put vitamin D in milk, and most African Americans are lactose intolerant. They can't drink milk, and they get nausea, vomiting, abdominal pain, bloating. So the Vitamin D Council asking, why would the federal government put vitamin D in milk when the people that are most vulnerable to vitamin D deficiency can't drink milk? So, but of course, you can't sue the federal government. And then this did not even make the news and stuff. So you had this group fighting for African Americans. African Americans didn't even know about it, or it didn't even hit the radar anywhere in the country. And but they were being honest and stuff, because of a lot of disproportionate diseases that we see: heart attacks, strokes, maternal mortality, and arthritis and diabetes. All this stuff, the progression of all this stuff can be slowed if you got everybody's vitamin D level up to normal.
Do you have an audio podcast? Are you looking to grow your audience? Partner with Prosper Digital TV, a virtual and full-service video production company. Visit www.prosperdigital.tv or call 718-622-0062 to get started today.
From what I understand, my very, very elementary knowledge of vitamin D is that we get most of our vitamin D from the sun.
Correct.
Is that correct? So I'm wondering, like, is it partially because of slavery and maybe not being in like sunny places that Black people in this country are so vitamin D deficient? Like, I live in New York City in Harlem, but it's like it just got sunny and it'll be sunny for about 3 more months, and then it'll be no sun or no direct sunlight for months after that. So what do you think about that? Like,
Well, we were designed to be on the equator. That's why God gave us melanated skin, because melanated skin protects you from skin cancers and it protects you from sunburn.
exactly.
So, however, when you move to more northern climates like United States, New York City, we have to, with melanin is good in protecting you from the bad effects of the sun.
Right.
But having melanated skin or darker skinned people have to stay in the sun 3 to 10 times longer than Caucasian Americans or lighter skinned people to produce the same amount of vitamin D.
Wow.
So our levels tend to run 30% lower than the average Caucasian person just by the fact that we have melanated skin.
Because we're not charging in the sun. Wow.
Is it as simple as, again, I'd say, I don't know if this question is done, but is it as simple as include having vitamin D vitamins? Like, is that just something you could be taking daily? Is that like something that could increase it?
Well, yeah, let me answer this question first. The thing is that you can't be in the sun long term because we have holes in the ozone layer. And so you have 2 different sun rays, UVA, UVB. UVA wavelength sunlight causes skin cancers, melanoma, basal cell, squamous cell, skin cancer. So we had to make a compromise with the dermatologist. Basically, I recommend supplements and stuff. But you're correct. 90% of vitamin D is produced from the sun striking your skin, but we don't have a perfect earth anymore with the holes in ozone. So the best way I would recommend for most people is to supplement, with, you can get vitamin D in the liquid form, the pill gel form, the soft gel form, the sublingual spray form. You can even get it in creams. I take the soft gel form and stuff. So I was vitamin D deficient myself at one time and broke my foot twice. Actual stress fractures from being on my feet 80 to 100 hours a week. So when you're working 80 to 100 hours a week, when is it light when you go outside? It was dark when I went to work, dark when I came home, regardless of the time of the year.
Yeah.
So I still supplement because I still don't get out in the sun as much as I did when I was a kid in Mississippi growing up. We played outdoors and stayed outdoors in. So we were making adequate vitamin D. The problem now is we live in a technology society versus an agricultural society. 50 years ago, men hunted, fished, and then women, didn't have indoor wash machine and dryer, so they had to hang their clothes on a clothesline. And then all the kids, we didn't have computers, so you had to go outside, play baseball, basketball, hopscotch, jump rope. So you were outside all day. So vitamin D levels 50 years ago were higher than they are now because then the advent of sunscreen. Sunscreen lowers your vitamin D production by 98%. Cloudy days lower your vitamin D production by 98%. The women in the Arab world, Dubai, have some of the lowest vitamin D in the world because they have the hijabs on and they're fully covered. The only thing exposed are their eyes. So if you have liver, kidney disease, your liver and kidney is needed to make vitamin D and good, healthy skin. So it's about 40 different things that can affect your vitamin D level. Steroids, it lowers the amount of vitamin D you make. Seizure medication, it lowers. So it's about 40 or 50 things that affect your vitamin D level. And then if you go in the hospital, the first 24 hours, your vitamin D level drops 50% automatically just by the fact that you're sick.
So we need to address vitamin D and treat it like a hormone. Because even as you're saying, if your vitamin D levels drop, I'm thinking like, how does your vitamin levels drop? Okay, so understanding it as a hormone will help.
It's a hormone. Yeah. It's a hormone.
As we sort of phase this conversation out, and it's been honestly completely mind blowing. I'm gonna go buy every supplement, every soft gel, every cream, everything. I'm gonna rob the Sephora vitamin D today. But I want to
And
know.
also, wait, before we transition really quick, do you have a specific brand that you would suggest? Because I mean, as we both, I'm going to go to and try to buy everything. Is there a specific brand that you would suggest to anyone?
Well, I don't have any stock in any vitamin D companies, nor do my family, but or I'm not advertising for any stores. I just go to Walmart, Publix, and buy it over the counter.
See, that's
Or
great
health
to know,
or
though,
health
for
food
people.
store.
Sorry, I said, yeah, that's really good for people to know that you could just go to a convenience store and you know, because
Yes.
I think sometimes we focus so much on like finding the perfect of anything, but it's just like you're saying, it's like go to Walgreens, go to Walmart and grab, you know, something over the counter and that's fine.
That's a great question. Yeah, honestly, for me, because like I said, I'm just gonna buy all of it. But
Yeah.
I'm kind of wondering. I know, and we didn't get into this. Like you've done some really critical brain stem cell injury surgeries and work and things like that. But really, just on a kind of bird's eye view perspective, what are we up against as Black people? Do you feel sort of like the war in trying to just protect our bodies and our health, you know, against like, you know, systematic racism and the PTSD and trauma of living in America, and like also obesity and heart disease? Like, what would you say is the biggest one?
I think the biggest thing is, dietary lack of exercise, not getting adequate amount of sleep, not eating properly.
Lifestyle.
Mental health issues need to be addressed. You know, it goes hand in hand. I think, more Blacks need to start seeing psychiatrists, psychologists for the post-traumatic stress disorders that they have. So we just have a multitude of problems. Everybody needs to take a multivitamin a day and start taking vitamin D. Vitamins are very important in your overall health. You actually need 100 different vitamins, enzymes, and cofactors a day, every day, in order to have a healthy, optimal body. And so the soil is not healthy like it used to be. So we've depleted all the nutrients out the soil. So that's why you have to take supplements now.
Give us a ray of hope. Give us some kind of good news in the fight. I know that we're up against a lot, but
well, if you take your vitamin D, you can alleviate a lot of these, or slow down the progression of them. So just getting your vitamin D levels up to normal, you decrease your risk of getting cancers by 30 to 40%. Yeah, like breast cancer or prostate cancer, which are very high in Blacks and stuff. And then actually, vitamin D protects you from the coronavirus and stuff. And so, had we instituted a vitamin D nationwide campaign, we wouldn't have 1.1 million people dead like we do now. And then the long COVID, it works on long COVID. About 10% of people have long COVID, that are still suffering from the effects of coronavirus. So vitamin D helps that group too. Vitamin D works in heart attacks and strokes, and so it helps people recover faster. It also works in traumatic brain injuries, and also works in lowering the fetal maternal mortality rate. So it's a hormone, remember? So it does a lot of different things. That's the reason I call vitamin D God's miracle vitamin, because I was like a kid in the candy store. It can do so many different things, and I still hadn't explored all the different things that you could do with vitamin D.
Let me ask you a question, because you said you retired in 2019, right?
That's correct.
So what does that look like now? Like, who cares for the doctor now? Like, what do you do to take care of yourself, even outside of medicine? Like, how are your day-to-day? I know you talked about mental health. Like, what do you do to stimulate yourself daily now that it's your time to rest and your time to kind of sit back and just enjoy life? What do you do?
Well, first of all, during my career, I worked 32 years. I worked 80 to 100 hours a week.
Woo,
Near the end of my career, I had like a little bit over a year of sick leave and vacation time. So basically, I was working 7 days a week. So after 32 years of medicine, dedicating my life to that, I was extremely tired.
Yeah.
And so
I would imagine.
I was getting up every morning at 4 o'clock and stuff. And then I was doing research, and I didn't have protected time to do research. I was staying up to 2 o'clock, writing papers, and then getting back up at 4 o'clock in the morning. So things that I do is, I try to keep my weight down, number one, because research has shown that people that maintain their weight have a longer life expectancy. You notice you don't see any morbidly obese 80, 90-year-old people. So most of the people that get to be 100 are usually like small and, slender. So keeping your weight down, I try to get more sleep. Well, actually, I am getting more sleep than I used to. And with my PR agency, I'm on a worldwide mission to educate the world about vitamin D. Actually, I was in New York City in 2018, and I told them that we were going to have these worldwide pandemics if they didn't address the vitamin D deficiency. Back then, I didn't know the name coronavirus, but I knew we were going to end up where we are now. So I was reading this pandemic was able to spread around the world because if half of the people are vitamin D deficient, you don't have an immune system to fight off anything. So we cannot vaccinate ourselves out of a pandemic. And then we're going to have another pandemic in the next 2 years. So we're going to relive the same truths again. You can't vaccinate yourself. Vaccines don't adequately work if you're vitamin D deficient.
I think I want to transition us into our final nugget. So as I kind of explained to you before, like I'll give you these sentences, you'll fill in the blank with one word, and this will be kind of the wrap up wisdom.
Okay.
So the first one is, the path to success is paved with
hard work.
The doctor's greatest tool is his
knowledge.
I wish the world was more
faithful.
My mind is
ever learning.
Tomorrow I will be
a better person.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so we thank you so much for joining us and sharing your nuggets with us. And before we let you go, we wanted to let people know where they can follow you, where they can continue to learn from you and be educated by you and your research over the years. So if you want to share anything from social media platforms that you have, your website, or if you're going to be at an event or a tour, let us know.
I have a Facebook page, Leslie Ray Matthews, and I have an Instagram page, Dr. Leslie Ray Matthews. And then you can just Google my name on Google, Leslie Ray Matthews. You pull up a lot of articles, a lot of different events I've done, and those. And then you can contact my PR agency, Ebony at epimediagroup.com.
Thank you so much, Dr. Matthews. This has been so enlightening.
Thank you so much. And honestly, I do hope that a lot of more younger people get to understand and learn from you about your specific teachings and topics. And so we appreciate you for tuning in, everyone. And thank you. This has been The Nugget.
Well, thank you for having me.